We all grow up with our own understanding of bullying, with a focus on a bully and a victim of bullying. But here, Helle Rabol Hansen, PhD of the Danish School of Education, tells us about a new understanding of bullying that focuses on relationships and dynamics within groups of children. This is the view of children, and understanding of bullying underpins the organization Free from Bullying. Bullying is seen as an expression of low tolerance within a group of children. These are patterns that we can already see in kindergarten and which develop further in primary and elementary school. Enjoy the report. I'd like to present a new way of understanding school bullying. This is an approach that is based on many years of study of what actually occurs when school pupils bully one another. With new ideas, I believe there is a need to think in new ways about bullying. And why is that? It's because although many years of intervention directed against school bullying is admittedly headed in the right direction, in that there is less bullying, there is one group of pupils that intervention has not helped, and that is those pupils that are bullied almost continually. Therefore, we have to take a new approach and be critical about how we have considered bullying up till now. And in order to better understand this new way of viewing bullying, I would like to start with the presentation of a story about Matthew. Today, Matthew is a young man who studies sociology and, in his view, has a good life. But Matthew was the victim of targeted bullying throughout his school life. What he experienced was that everything about him was singled out as wrong by his classmates. It was his way of walking, it was his way of talking, it was everything he came out with when they were talking. It was his way of being a school pupil, it was his interests, it was his way of eating, it was his parents, it was everything. And Matthew tells us that by the time he left school, this form of bullying had become so constant that it was the way the class related. For example, he mentioned an episode which is very clear to him. One day, a girl threw a glove which hit him. This resulted in a game in which no one would pick up the glove because it had been touched by Matthew and had become disgusting. He sat in silence in the class with that experience. There was no one who would pick up this glove, not even at the end of the school day. They would rather avoid a glove or anything else that had touched him. We will now digress from this story about Matthew, but keep the story in mind because we'll be returning to it. In the meantime, I would like to say something about how for generations in Denmark, in Scandinavia, perhaps around the world, people have regarded bullying. The way people have viewed bullying was in fact to do with personalities. People have expressed their understanding of bullying with statements like, "Here is an aggressive person who has come into contact with a weak person." This has meant that we have been extremely occupied with placing the blame in one place or another. We have thought, this person hasn't had a proper upbringing, which is why he's a bit aggressive, or she's a bit overweight, or he's a bit shy because he lacks self-confidence, and so on. A year ago, I carried out work with a colleague in conjunction with children's organizations, which caused us to wonder about the way we understood bullying. The reason for this was there was no explanation for those classes where there wasn't bullying. Did this mean these were just classes where there were no aggressive pupils and it was just that no one was overweight and there wasn't a child who had problems with self-confidence? No, this didn't sound quite right. So we started to get curious about what was really going on when school pupils bullied each other. For that reason, we started a research project. And this entirely new research I would like to tell you about was carried out at the Danish School of Education in the research group EXPUS, Exploring Bullying in Schools. We conducted research among 1,052 school pupils in West Copenhagen into how bullying related to other aspects of their lives. We asked a lot of questions about pupils' view of themselves, about their home life, their relationship with their parents. There were a lot of questions about pupils' experiences of attending class and about pupils' experiences with their class. These revealed a very clear result that there was just one of these question groups that had a direct relation to the occurrence of bullying in class, and that was the question about class environment. Understood in that way, the more pupils who answer negatively with regard to their relationship to the class, for example, "I'm afraid to voice my opinion," or In my class, there are some who make all the decisions, or in my class, you have to be careful what you say. Responses of that nature. Then there was a high occurrence of bullying. And in contrast, if many pupils answered positively to the question about the life of the class, there were fewer instances of bullying. And what can we use these results for? We can use these results to look critically at what our views of bullying have been up to now. This is because there are indications that bullying is not to be found in a pupil's self-confidence or self-worth. There are factors which suggest that the cause of bullying isn't primarily to do with upbringing. It doesn't have to do with body shape. It has to do with culture which exists in the class. And that culture could well be a culture of bullying. And how does that come about? If the class doesn't have anything to unite around, if it isn't united about going to school together, here in 5A we are together to learn our lessons, and so on, then there are other things which will unite the class. Humans have a need to have a shared purpose, and one thing that can unite the class is deciding who is in and who is out. We have noticed, as flies on the wall, in school, in classes where bullying takes place, that it is in fact a focal point for the whole class. Each pupil in the class has their own little role in that motor we call bullying. And the scary thing is, the longer the motor has been running, the more right it feels for them who are a part of that motor. And now we'll return to Matthew, who I was speaking about earlier. Matthew, in fact, mentioned an interesting thing. He said that one day some of his classmates were talking about American rap music. Now that just happened to be one of Matthew's big interests, so there were a lot of things he wanted to contribute. He had lots of information, lots of things he wanted to talk about, but he didn't. He held back because he was used to the way the motor was. He was not one of those who should take part. He should withdraw and be inconspicuous. Now, if you could imagine that you're a classmate or a teacher or parent who has perhaps been sitting on the sidelines and seen Matthew and the incident with the glove or the classmates and rap music, it could be that those who are looking at these incidences would say, Matthew's not being bullied. He's the kind of person who wants to keep to himself and withdraws into the background. And this is precisely the problem with this commonplace, out-of-date view of bullying. And that is, we have placed the blame on particular people. We haven't considered the opposite, which is about the way children and groups of people can react together. It can be a reaction to not being invited to be part of the group. So my proposal to redefine our views on bullying is that we consider bullying as a form of fellowship, a pattern of inclusion or exclusion to unite around, a form of exclusive we fellowship in which people are thus excluded by their own. Researchers are thus in agreement that we should be critical about how we have considered bullying up until now. Research shows that class environment and well-being are the most important factors in the occurrence of bullying. If the class cannot unite on anything else, it will unite on who can decide who is in and who is out. Bullying, therefore, doesn't have to do with particular individuals, but should be viewed as patterns of inclusion and exclusion that pupils can be a part of.